Good morning, good evening, good afternoon to all my blessed beloveds out there in living and thriving land. You're watching Living and Thriving with Rusty, and I'm Rusty. Today is Taco Tuesday, my favorite day of the week, except I can no longer have the show because I've got to lose about, a first grader. 25 pounds, gotta go, gotta roll. Today's guest is Karen Gross, and I'm really looking forward to learning more about what makes her ooey gooey on the inside. What makes her tick? Why does she get up out of bed in the morning? It's always such a curious question. So today's guest is Karen Gross. Karen, how are you this morning?
I'm fine, thank you. Nice to be with you.
Nice to be with you as well. And today's not a day to actually have visuals, so you're just going to see Karen's name across the screen. Karen, tell us who you are, what you do, and what makes you you.
So I'm an author and educator, and most of my attention is focused on how to help students succeed, particularly students who are struggling with trauma. And in today's world, that is sadly a very sizable topic.
Yeah, it's a very tough topic because there's such a fine line, and there's so many instances where trauma is prevalent, and I couldn't imagine. So do you actually go into the schools and do trauma work? And explain what that would mean.
Sure. So I do things on various levels. I write about trauma, and I have a new book that came out from Teachers College Press. Then I create auxiliary trauma tools that teachers can use. And then I do teacher training, faculty development, now not in person, now done online because of COVID. And then I work with school systems to help all of their teachers and staff and administrators be able to navigate today's world with their students more effectively. And then pre-COVID, I used to go to trauma sites, like when a school had a suicide or there was a concert shooting. I would then go to that area and work with the schools and the teachers to help them restart their schools and find a new normal.
And what state are you located in?
Well, now I'm in Massachusetts, but I used to travel around the globe. My other home is Washington, D.C., because I worked as a senior policy advisor for the Department of Education prior.
Oh, cool.
So
good old Massachusetts. You're getting that pumpkin sweater, fall, crispy air, burr at late at night, fireplace feeling.
Yeah, almost. We're almost there. The leaves are starting to change. So one of the interesting things for me is the seasons, because it is actually a useful thing for kids to realize that things change. There's an ebb and a flow, and if you're not feeling well one day, you can feel better another day. So weather is like a feeling thermometer. It allows you to recognize change.
Unfortunately, here on the Gulf side of Florida, we have summer, summer, and more summer.
Sorry.
I think we go from a light shade of brown to a dark shade of brown, and that's about it, the extent of our seasons here. So it's like a vortex. I always wait for Rod Sterling to come around the corner going, imagine if you had winter. So Karen, what is the title of your book?
My book is titled Trauma Doesn't Stop at the School Door. And the title actually is a very important message about trauma, which is that you carry it with you wherever you go. It's not like it ever goes away. You can find amazing ways to ameliorate it, but it doesn't disappear. And so students carry trauma into school from the time they're very young, in many instances, all the way through adult education. So the book actually has illustrations in it because I think that helps understand trauma, as did my prior book. And Teachers College Press has enabled it to be both as an ebook and paperback and, of course, hardcover, but it's a book that can be used, and the hope is that it will be used. It's got some theory in it, but it's also practical with real strategies and solutions for educators.
I think it's very difficult not to emotionally connect with your students. I was a paraeducator for a number of years, and I loved my students. And of course, being a paraeducator, you're dealing with freshly traumatic, situations. What do you advise for teachers, particularly in regards to being able to detach from the emotionality of the situation?
Well, that's a very important question because trauma is actually catching. A teacher can literally catch it, kind of like you catch a virus from students or others, and develop secondary trauma and vicarious trauma. So it's the question you're asking is a really important one right now, because teachers are exposed to so much trauma, whether they're doing it online or in person or in some hybrid fashion. So here are some strategies that teachers need to think about. First of all, self-care is not the same thing as being selfish. Many people equate the two. Taking care of yourself isn't about being selfish. It's about becoming your best self so you can help others. And so I tell teachers they need to watch out for themselves and take care of themselves. Take time to do things they care about. Step back a little bit as needed. Do whatever gives them pleasure. Otherwise, they too will become stressed out and show more trauma symptomology. The other thing is that I think institutions, schools and other places have an obligation to help teachers by creating care rooms or special places where teachers can go to process what's going on, to have people listen to them and not be judged, a safe environment, ideally a place with a play table, which may sound like something for children, but is absolutely something for adults, where there are feeling toys and manipulables and other kinds of items, including scents and lifesavers and other things, so that people can find a place and space in which to process what's happening.
I think it's very difficult for teachers to step up into that position in which they say, hey, I need help. I think for the most part, at least through my experience as a teacher, it's always about caring for other people and not really taking that time for yourself. And so I love the fact that you address that in your book.
Well, actually, I appreciate the comment, and I think you're correct in terms of teachers asking for help. They're used to being asked for help and not asking themselves for help.
Well done.
But institutions can change the cultural norm on that and make it acceptable to recognize that at certain times, teachers really do need help. And if you make that help available and non-judgmentally offered, it becomes easier, especially if you see the benefits that come from it. So let me also add, it's really useful to have people helping who understand education and understand psychology and understand whether it's crisis management or whatever is going on, because trust is a key part to getting quality help that works. So
the frustrating piece that I had, and the reason why I quit teaching for public school and went into coaching and teaching independently, was the fact that here in America, and my counterparts in other countries don't seem to have the same issue, but here in America, we are policy over education now. So I think that there's a little bit of intimidation going on because administrators are looking more at policy versus the student or education. Because we're such a sue happy country, they come at you with that first. And I think that intimidates a lot of teachers from wanting to step up and say, hey, I'd like to have a conversation. You know, I'm feeling this way, or this is something I need to address, or take a day off. And I think that's really mucking up the opportunities for not only our teachers, but also more importantly, our students and their ability to gain the achievements that they could have, where it's kind of being neglected, if that makes sense.
Um, I I agree in part. I think our focus in education has shifted. And I think sadly, we're more focused on outcomes than we are on process. And how to help students love to learn gets lost in the effort to try to ensure that we have measurable outcomes to prove to some authority that we're doing our job well. I also think that generally we focus, and this has become very obvious now in the COVID era, we focus way less than we should on mental health and focus way more, particularly right now, on physical health. Now, physical health matters, and schools preparing for the physical well-being of children is important, but physical well-being is actually not a separate topic from psychological well-being. In fact, there's a whole mind-body connection. So if we don't take care of how kids are doing psychologically, and teachers, then we're also actually not taking care of their physical health either. But we seem to be reluctant to pay sufficient attention to mental wellness.
Well, and I think it's interesting because I believe that children are supposed to swirl around and catch butterflies and pick their nose and do what, you know, what their body tells them to do. But a lot of teachers feel that they need to sit down and be quiet and listen to 8 hours or 6 hours or whatever of lessons. And not all kids are built that way. So I think the physical piece is really hard for teachers to find balance. You know, I don't think gym is enough for a lot of kids. And
Well,
right now, in this day and age, I mean, my daughter's a 15-year-old. She goes to college in the morning and high school in the afternoon. And by the time she hit I think it was seventh grade, they don't even go outside anymore. They're stuck in a cement block with fluorescent lights and recycled air. And, you know, I think no matter how old you are, you should be able to have at least a half an hour outside during your schooling.
Well, I also think we don't recognize who our students are, and they're not homogenous. I mean, different kids learn in different ways. They have very different learning styles. For some kids, going out is critical. It's essential to their well-being. Now, other kids may not be as keen on that, although it's something well worth encouraging. But for many students, many students, finding ways to help them learn in their best way is what we need to be doing, instead of trying to find one strategy that works for all students. There is no one strategy that works for all students.
No.
And so you describe your daughter, and another parent describes their child or their children, and a teacher who's going to succeed at any level needs to know who their students are, which is actually a suggestion I have right now online and in person. If ever there were a time to note your students' names and to call them by their name and compliment them and give them positive reinforcement, it's now. So online, not just talking to this like amorphous group, even if you can sort of see them, it's good morning, Sarah, how are you? Or that was a really good question you asked David yesterday. Or do you remember the comment Sam made 3 days ago? Well, that was a really good idea, and I've come back to it. So we aren't doing enough to give teachers the tools they need to help the students they have.
I like how you encourage and support more of the Montessori school of thought, which is the way I raised my daughter. Um, it's individual, but it's respective to you're a participant in this educational system. And hi, Karen, how was your day? Versus hi, class, how was your day? I, I, I like that you really support and encourage that ideology that you are a participant in this and let's do this together versus the old school where you'd get smacked with a ruler if you looked off your paper. We are going to be wrapping up a little bit, and I want to make sure everybody has access to your book, especially the educators that watch this show, because I think it'll be very valuable as a tool, a resource, and maybe bend a little bit of complacent thinking that we've had over the years in regards to education and mental health. So where can we find you?
So you can find me on my website, and I have a contact form there. You can see my adult books, and you can see my children's books and my auxiliary trauma items. And I just want to mention, because it ties into what you just said, that if it's really important to help kids understand and acknowledge the feelings that they're having. So if you can name it, you can tame it. If you can't name it, you can't even begin to tame it. So there's a feeling alphabet to help kids identify their feelings. So all of these are at www.karengrosscooper, Karen Gross, Gross, education.com. But if you get stuck and forget, and you just type into Google Karen Gross Education or Karen Gross Trauma or anything vaguely related to that, you'll find me. And I hope your listeners are able to use some of these materials to help their students succeed, because at the end of the day, we need that for the benefit of our larger society. We need to help all our children.
Well, Karen, your show is actually going to air closer to Christmas, and I think that is a valuable time to really have this message, because that is already a sensitive topic for a lot of families, and with COVID and the economy and the way all of that's going, I think it's going to be more sensitive this year. So I appreciate you taking time with my audience to have this discussion, because we need to team up and kind of pull it all together and be a better community. And the more tools we have in our tool belt, I think the better we'll be.
I agree, and I know we're running out of time, but let me just mention that the holidays are going to be very difficult for many people, because the traditions that we had are going to have to change. The kind of get-togethers we had are going to change. And I think people need to think about new kinds of traditions that they can create to replace the ones that maybe temporarily or perhaps long-term changed. And so lots of the materials that I've provided are trauma responsive and trauma sensitive. So they allow people to talk and think and feel and articulate what it is that's going on, so they can find new ways forward.
I love that, Karen. Thank you so much. You know, there's just a whole change that's going on. I don't know if it's evolutionary or de-evolutionary. We have to wait and see, right?
Absolutely.
Keep me posted as to any new things that you come out with, and I would love to have you back on the show, because I think your message is valuable to all of us. And, you know, have a great holiday season. Big hugs to you.
Well, thank you, and to all of your listeners as well. Thank you.
Bye, Karen. Thank you.
But what I will do, just so you know, is I may send you some images that you could use on the video. If you, oh, that won't work. Well, maybe it would.
I don't know. We'll figure it out.
Okay.
All right,
nice
Karen.
to be with you.
Nice to be with you. Enjoy fall. See you soon.
And we'll do it again.
Yes, ma'am.
Absolutely. Bye.
Thank you. Bye. You're watching Living and Thriving with Rusty, and I'm Rusty. And as I promised, we're going through a whirlwind tour of 175 people from all edges of the earth. I don't believe in the flat earth because I had a cat once, and I know we'd all be kicked off by now. Nonetheless, 2 cookies, not 4. Love each other. You know, it's a really great time to pull out all of the arts and crafts that you had in your drawer and make gifts for people. I think Karen's right. We should come up with different traditions. Maybe go back to when I was a kid, and if you got a bike for Christmas, oh my God, that's awesome. Instead of spending money that you really don't have and maxing out your credit cards because, well, we're changing things. It's all getting mixed up. Know that you're beautiful, know that you're loved, and until next time.